The following transcription was recently acquired from SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Approximately 8 months ago, a series of digital and binary radio codes were received at the SETI Astrological Radio Telescope Receiving Station in Juneau, Alaska. These radio signals came in a series of pulses ranging between 3.5 to 9 minutes each. Scientists who study interstellar communication signals began decoding these pulses, eventually deciphering the various distinctions between voice language and digital telemetry conversion ratios of the signal itself. Comparisons were made with other known transmissions that have been received in the past from the Voyager spacecraft and other spacecraft that have been launched from Earth in the past 40 years. It was determined that these signals originated from the Alpha Centauri system. Because these signals had degraded so much, most of the transmission could only be deciphered through a digital conversion process. The originator of these transmissions had sent a message by vocal and digital formats. The voice part of the transmission is lost, but the binary digital signal had very little degradation and such was deciphered in its entirety. As ironic as it is to say this, these signals were found to have come from a spacecraft that was launched from Earth in 1997. The name of the vessel was called the Jupiter 2. It was the first interstellar family to be launched into space for the intent of finding other places in the galaxy to live. The commander of the mission was Professor John Robinson, his wife Maureen Robinson, their children Penny Robinson, Will Robinson, and Judy Robinson. One additional member of the crew was Major Don West, the co-pilot. It was understood by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration that this vessel was lost in space shortly after its launch in 1997. These signals prove that to be untrue. Before we begin sharing the transcription, it is to be stated publicly that there was a saboteur on board who intended to destroy the ship and kill the family. His name was Dr. Zachary Smith. According to military records of the time, Dr. Smith was assigned to examine each of the Robinson family and to determine their health and readiness for the mission ahead of them. In the hours after the launch, military records show that an unknown radio signal was received from the ship and was transmitted to an unknown party. It has now been confirmed that Dr. Smith worked for a foreign space agency who had intended to sabotage the mission. According to Professor Robinson, Smith had reprogrammed the robot on board to destroy the vessel and thereby murder the crew. Smith accidentally became trapped on board and was unable to leave the ship before the launch, which almost resulted in his own death. The log shows further that Smith revived the co-pilot, Major Don West. All the crew survived and Smith became the unwilling addition of the crew's mission of going to Alpha Centauri. Based on the transmissions received, it is unclear if the Robinson family ever did reach Alpha Centauri. The message received was dated May 22, 2018. We are now going to begin the transcription that was deciphered with the hope that those who hear the Robinsons' last message would find some closure as to what became of this first family of space travel who attempted to find a place to live other than on Earth. This is Professor John Robinson, Captain and Commanding Officer of the Jupiter 2, which left Earth in 1997. According to our chronometers, the year is 2018. It is possible that because of space anomalies, that we have gone forward into time beyond even what we think it is today. We have always relied on the main computer because most of the secondary systems were damaged after Smith's attempts to sabotage the ship. I deeply regret that this will be my final communication. It is hoped that this will reach Earth. For many years, our unwilling companion, Dr. Smith, had tried to return to Earth and he even attempted ways of communicating with Earth by means of using aliens that we encountered in our travels. Sadly, Dr. Smith himself passed away only a few years ago. The purpose of this transmission is to explain the facts and present conditions we face since we left Earth. We left Earth in October 1997, with the greatest of hopes that we would reach our destination, Alpha Centauri. Within 3 hours of launch, we encountered a meteorite storm which threw our ship off course and nearly destroyed us. During this time, the entire family was in suspended animation. Dr. Smith had hidden inside a retractable seat, although he never intended to remain on board after doing his dastardly deed. He was sent by a foreign government to sabotage our ship and kill me and my family and the co-pilot, Major Don West. He reprogrammed our robot to activate after a certain time into the mission, began to sabotage essential systems including autopilot and our navigational systems. As Smith attempted to leave the ship, he realized the countdown had already completed and the door was closed before he could leave. Smith also knew he had only a few seconds before the ship would actually launch, and so he strapped himself into the retractable seat below deck. When the ship was out of Earth orbit, he first tried to deactivate the robot by taking out its power pack, then he tried to switch off the main power grid to the robot, which failed. Then he tried to reprogram it, but it was too late. The robot had activated itself and began its programming to destroy our vessel. Smith ran up to the bridge and activated one of the suspended animation tubes to revive Major West. West in turn revived the rest of the family and also was able to help regain control of the ship after the meteorite storm had passed, but the robot had already done irreparable damage to the ship. The robot also destroyed our radio gear, which made communicating with Alpha Control impossible. All onboard systems, including the animation capsules, malfunctioned, and as such, Earth assumed our ship was destroyed by the meteorite storm. In the months that followed, we were able to regain most, if not all, of what was destroyed after initial launch. Smith, whether he liked it or not, became a reluctant member of our crew. Though he did very little to help us except cause havoc and attempted to commit further acts against the family, we took them in stride and continued our odyssey towards Alpha Centauri. The journey has been rewarding and at the same time disappointing because we never reached our objective. Presently we are marooned again on another planet that is capable of supporting human life. Many crashes we've had on planets always resulted in a recoverable blast-off again into space, but this time the crash has caused irreparable damage to our atomic fuel store. The core of the ship is leaking radiation and we cannot repair it. There is only a matter of weeks before it goes critical. Maureen and I both feel the only hope is to send the children away from the planet by means of using the space pod, with the hope they will reach escape velocity and perhaps reach another planet before this planet is totally destroyed by the core. It's been 21 years since we left Earth. The children have grown into responsible adults and Judy and Don eventually got married. Since I'm the captain of the ship, I married them. They both have one child who they named Alpha. It was adaptly the perfect name for the first child born in space, since the main goal of our mission was to reach Alpha Centauri itself. He's now about 6 years old and doesn't understand the seriousness of this situation. But he does realize that if he doesn't go with his aunt and uncle, neither them nor his mother will survive. He's really a smart little guy and I pray for their safe journey to another unknown planet in the face of this uncertain future we all face together. I feel the anguish that Don must be feeling. To know he will never see his little boy grow up. Judy insists that she be allowed to remain with Don, but he knows the only hope for him is that the two most important people in his life be able to escape this nightmare. The pod has a maximum load of 4 persons and we don't intend to let the kids stay with us, though they too argued that Don could take their places on the pod. Penny has acquired much of the knowledge that I taught her about the ship's navigation and other primary systems, so she will be able to assist Will with flying the space pod, should he get tired during the journey. The radiation has already affected the robot. It began malfunctioning early on, and because Smith is no longer with us, we cannot reprogram it to do even the simplest tasks around the ship. So reluctantly we had to deactivate it. Another essential part of the ship was our chariot, which we used to move around on the planets that we visited to locate safe havens and to do other things such as locating food and water or even fuel sources in some instances. The power packs have been exhausted for many years and we eventually had to leave it on the last planet we were able to leave from. But its function was served many times over. It helped us find all the things we needed for the secondary systems like the life support systems and to replenish the food replicators that were essential to life. The pod itself uses a fuel source and not atomic energy, but we've been able to put a full load of fuel on board for the trip. Since we cannot navigate in space except to triangulate on known planets that our sensors show have oxygen, it will be up to Will and Penny to determine the closest planetoid they can target their one-way trip to. No one on Earth should ever assume that a penny of the money used to build the ship and to send us into space was wasted. All of us did the best we could to accomplish the task of reaching our destination, Alpha Centauri. Though Smith was a nuisance, he also is a cherished friend who I miss even now. His bungling most of the time made Don and me laugh, although there were times that I wanted to strangle him. Sometimes he even put his own life in danger to help us, and for that I will always be grateful to him. Will and the robot were his constant companions whenever there was something happening or if we needed them to go on surveys of the planet. Smith was much older than even I was, and I think that contributed to his passing. On many instances, we could tell Smith was having a hard time doing the things he needed to do because of his age. For this reason, most times we never forced him to do the work, but sometimes he would. It all depended on how he felt. There's one instance I remember specifically where we encountered a time merchant who had the ability to send us to different planets and sometimes to different times, and Smith elected to go back to Earth in order to stop himself from going on board the Jupiter 2. After Smith left, the time merchant, as we found out he was, told us that because Smith altered history, the ship would have been destroyed by the meteorite storm. I sent Will back through time to stop Smith. The information that Will passed on to Smith made him realize that he should go through as history had already played out. So Smith returned to the present. We were able to destroy the time merchant's machinery and escape from his slavery, which he forced us to endure. That one event always stands out in my mind because it shows that Smith really did have feelings and cared about us. It's something I will never forget as long as I live. Many of the aliens that we encountered in our travels were humane in their treatment of us as space travelers. Most were selfish and wanted only their own desires, but others had concerns for us as much as we did for them. In most scenarios it was Smith himself who got us into the fixes that we faced, but we always worked it out one way or the other. There was an instance when a zookeeper visited our planet with a vessel full of all types of different species of life from all over the galaxy. Smith accidentally released all of these creatures on the planet. The zookeeper had quite a task reacquiring them all and putting them back in their cages. Many times he threatened to take us as one of his specimens and even threatened to kill us for what Smith had done, but he knew we were all in danger, including himself, especially when one of the creatures almost killed him. Even Will himself had the opportunity to return to Earth, and it was only a few months after we had left. Somehow we found a derelict time machine on the planet we were on, and Will activated it, sending him back to Earth, where he attempted to tell the local people in a small town who he was. They didn't believe him, of course. By the time the space agency arrived, we had activated the machine again, and it brought Will back, but it also destroyed the time machine, so we never again was able to use it. Each and every encounter we've had since leaving Earth has proven to us as a family that we started this and we wanted to end it together, no matter how long it took. Now the opportunity to continue and finish our odyssey is over. Instrumentation on the bridge indicates that the radiation levels are reaching critical. My own senses are failing me because of the radiation exposure. Maureen is already bedridden, and Don tries to keep himself active outside doing things in our makeshift garden, which gives us some fresh vegetables on occasion. The time has come to send the space pod into space. It is the last moments for us and for the Jupiter too. If we don't send the pod now, the children will be affected as well, and all of this would have been for nothing. I'm going out to say goodbye, and then I'll come again to dictate the last few minutes of this log. What a relief! The space pod has launched successfully according to radio communication from Penny and Will. They reported that the ship is out of the planet's orbit and is now beginning the journey to the nearest planetoid that can support human life. As I await the inevitable day of our atomic core's destruction, I can only hope that from this log entry, it will reach someone on Earth who will know what happened to us. This is John Robinson, the captain of the Jupiter 2, signing off. This completes the full transcription that was received in the past 6 months from the crew of the Jupiter 2 spacecraft, which launched in October 1997 from Earth. End of report.